here we are at another episode of the Break It Down for Brackens podcast. This one is an interesting one to me for sure. We are going to meet with Mark Disney. Mark Disney currently lives in Oregon. I think it's Oregon, not Washington State, but he'll tell us in the podcast. He has spent his quite a few years learning about the marijuana industry. And in this podcast, we focus on the differences between THC and CBD. I ask a lot of probably dumb questions, but I really wanted to know what are the benefits of both, especially with him being on the West Coast and us being on the East Coast. The difference between legalization and decriminalization, we talked about that. We talked about a lot of good topics, and we realized that the cannabis industry is something that will require quite a few more podcasts in the future. The podcast today is brought to you by a few sponsors. One of my websites, which is goodcompany.wv.net. That is the clearinghouse for any sort of concept or something I'm working on. If I want to put it on the internet, I put it on there. So on there you find the Bros and Bras calendar, which all events are suspended until the quarantine is lifted. But you can see where they might be meeting. Maybe they still show up. You never know. It's also a place where the Bros and Bras retail store is. We can have, you can buy gear on there and have it shipped to you, or create some sort of dead drop where you work that out with the vendor. You can also drop off clothes to have the Bros and Bras logo screened on there. That company is called BLT's. I think it's bltswv@gmail.com, but that's the guy if you call if you need t-shirts made. So check that out at goodcompany.wv.net. We're also brought to you by justthefreakingrecipe.com. This is a website you go to pick up some new ideas on things to make that are easy, bachelor-centric, crock pot recipes and things like that. But what's unique is that there's no backstory. You don't have to hear about Sally's trip to Tuscany and she was experiencing all the herbs and smells in the air and how her and her family went on a vacation prior to getting to just the recipe and just the ingredients and things you need. This is a much more streamlined version, and it's fun to read because there's a bunch of smart-ass comments in the ingredients and in the instructions. That makes it a little entertaining. That's something fun to do while you're on quarantine. We're also brought to you by Brackens Painting. Brackenspainting.com is where you find out more information about my painting company. And it's a commercial and residential painting company. We currently have quite a bit of work stacked up, but we're definitely willing to give people prices and let them know approximately when we can get to you. This podcast is also brought to you by City National Bank, bankatcity.com. I work with Melissa Knott in Jefferson County. She's been a real exceptional resource figuring out this whole SBA loan and the other challenges that we're seeing with the stimulus money and what I should apply for and what I shouldn't apply for. So Melissa Knott with Jefferson National Bank, thank you for being a sponsor of this podcast also. So let's see what Mark Disney, my track and cross country rival from back in the high school days, has to say about the cannabis industry. Hello, Mark. Thank you for being on the Break It Down for Brackens podcast. We are recording as of now. As I said in the intro, Mark and I go back like to 1989, 1990. That's like 30 years?
Oh, man. That's math now. Yes.
Damn, dog.
Yes.
Yeah, we are getting old, okay? We are getting old. You got to figure we met in high school. So if that's early high school, and we only met because we were on rival cross country and track teams, and we had similar haircuts. That's pretty much the.
Yeah. People thought we were kind of lookalikes. One blonde, one black hair.
Yeah, definitely. And we were both fast. Well, so Mark, we're going to break down the differences between THC and CBD. I have all kinds of questions about this. But before we jump into that content, tell us of your stories of adventure and travel. I mean, you traveled across the country numerous times by motorcycle. You've lived in all kinds of really interesting places. So give us the dirt, man. Tell us about what you've been doing for 20 years.
Well, right on, man. Right on. Well, first off, appreciate you having me on here and getting good to see you again after all this time. I had to clean, one of us had to get cleaned up here, so I went for it.
Yeah.
But yeah, man. So, as you know, you and I even bartended a little bit together, and I worked the bar scene in DC, Northern Virginia, even restaurant management for a while. And left that about 8 years ago. I decided, I need a change. I need to do something. And that pursued my passion towards the cannabis plant. And I decided to move out to, originally it was actually Las Vegas. A buddy of mine had a job there doing some work in his warehouse. And I was still feeling that urge. Oh, I need to get to Colorado. I know things are going to happen there. But I jumped so far forward. The thing that got me so interested in that really goes back all the way to the mid-late 90s. After I'd done, with school and all that at the time, for those of you that all remember, I played in a band back in the day called Permagrin. And after Permagrin, we disbanded. And at that point, I was bartending all the time, and I had a lot of excess cash. So I decided, man, I'm going to start doing some trips with this money. And well, I love cannabis. Where do you go? Amsterdam predominantly. So I started treks there in 1997. I did about 14 to 17 trips. It's a little vague on the last few because, it was Amsterdam. But, but the biggest thing was I didn't just go there and party down. Sure, I went to the coffee shops. I enjoyed every aspect of that. But I went to different coffee shops and I tried multiple different strains and things like that because I just wanted to see, well, what is the difference? I even went to the cannabis college. That was very, very interesting experience. For anyone that ever does go to Amsterdam, you definitely need to go check that out. It's a college set up to kind of gives you the history and the background of the plant. And then the neatest thing was in the basement, they had little different grow window operations. And each plant was growing in its own specific controlled environment based on where it was from. So they had a Kush plant from an Afghani Kush growing in dirt and rocks in, 80 some odd degree. It was just cranking down on the thing, looked beautiful. And then they had a little jungle scene next to it of something from like the Colombian strains or things like that. So you start to realize, wow, this is something that is all over the world. THC usage goes back all the way to 4,000, 5,000 BC in Chinese culture. So this is something that's always been used as a medicinal herb. So this is something that I was just intrigued about. I will preface for anybody that's tuned in and all that, I am not doctored. I am not certified on any aspects of this. This is just, as Kevin mentioned, 20, 25 years of my own personal studying and wanting to learn all about these things. So that's what led me to Colorado. And Colorado was awesome being there the day they went legal in 2014. There was actually a show on Netflix at the time. I can't remember the name of it, Net Profits or something like that, but it's neat. You get your 15 seconds of fame. I got a 15th of a second. You can see me on their video standing in my onesie in front of the dispensary getting ready to go in. In a line of hundreds, I stood in for 2.5 hours.
Wow.
But I wanted to be there that first day to contribute to the cause, So I did that, been involved working in that industry since then. You mentioned I did Colorado for about 4 years. And during that time, yes, I got involved in motorcycles back around 2011. And because of all my travels overseas up until about 2007, and then I just stopped traveling overseas so much and it started getting really expensive. So just laid low a bit here, but then, I got the motorcycle, man. And that was awesome. Across the country, close to a dozen times on the bike and, on-road, off-road. So it really, you spend that much time in your helmet by yourself in your head, and really get a lot of soul searching. And it was that actually led me to where I am now. I envision, being, in as much of the forefront of this industry as I could, with my company Rokin, and my friend who founded it. It was a great opportunity presented at the time, and it was because when I was in Colorado a year after they went legal, I managed a couple of dispensaries up there, so I got to learn the ins and outs of the industry itself. And on a visit up there, my friend came and he's like, "Oh man, we got to do something to get involved in this." And I think that's when you and I had crossed paths at one point over some few weeks where I was in town, and I was telling you that we're gonna do a vaporizer pen company, and I think the response was, "What the hell is that, man?"
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So yeah, it's been a big learning curve for what we've been doing. We started November 2016, and we've been going since then. And in that time period, as the aforementioned motorcycling, it actually does come into play. For those that are watching this, even on the Rokin link, when I link it to them, I was on a motorcycle for the first 6 to 8 months of Rokin, doing sales throughout Oregon, Washington, riding down to Vegas, and then shooting up to Colorado. I would load all my panneries up with hardware, and then a bag on the back, a waterproof bag with a bunch of Rokin gear, and wear my suit. So anyway, I get off track, but go on.
No. You're not off track. You're definitely stimulating a lot of questions, though. So, dude, we're on the East Coast, man. You're on the West Coast. It's just drastically different. The way you're talking, you talk as if marijuana is legal everywhere. The way you flow with your conversation. So, it's legal in Vegas?
It's legal in Nevada. Yep.
Nevada. It's legal in California.
Oregon, Washington. Oh, this is quiz time for me. Let's see. A lot of states that are medical. I think we're 27 to 30 plus. I'm not 100% sure on my numbers because there are quite a few that have been moving that route recently. Legal.
That's a totally different world, right? So I guess what I'm trying to say is it's hard to really understand the scope of anything in the industry, even with something like what you're doing, when we live in a state where it's not even medical. And frankly, who understands what medical is? And that's probably an entirely different podcast, right? But
yeah, it would be.
Right.
It's state by state. It's crazy.
So there's too many questions already. So I'll start with one. Rokin created a vaporizer pen.
Correct.
Does the pen have marijuana in it?
No.
You load marijuana into it?
You can load any type of concentrate product into it that is deemed inhalable, if you will. So not just marijuana THC, but you could put CBD isolate in there. You could, even if you were one who really likes to have a chamomile or something like that in your, I wouldn't suggest smoking that in any grape, but some people like to use other concentrates, but predominantly it's used.
You're talking about like the flavored juice. Absolutely. Sort of vaping that we see here where people aren't smoking marijuana. So in other words, it's basically a vape machine that you can load. Okay, I got it. Concentrate into. Okay. So then when you were traveling around selling the product from vendor to vendor, you were selling the device, you weren't selling a preloaded device.
That is correct. We just sell hardware. So the best way in layman's terms for anyone to think about it and kind of get the gist, when everyone looks at the gold rush, and everyone ran west for the gold rush, and this was called the green rush when marijuana went legal. Everyone ran to get involved in selling and growing and all of that. Well, the people that made the most money during the gold rush were the ancillary devices, in the sense of the people that sold the pans and the shovels and all those things. So, we were looking at it as in something of, well, no, it's not going to be the most lucrative out of all of those different aforementioned means to this industry, but it's an avenue that needs to be addressed and taken seriously, and companies need to create good quality products. And unfortunately, there was a lot of stuff out there, and there still is a little bit of product out there that just isn't made with the best product. and the best materials, I should say, and you don't want to be inhaling that type of thing. So,
yeah, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to have this podcast, because in an industry where there's so many new products coming out, whether it's hardware or software or concentrate or whatever, it's hard to know what's good versus what's just accessible. So, okay, if that makes sense, that clears up. So you're selling hardware, but describe it for me, man. You can walk into a shop in Oregon and say, hey, let me, kind of like buying Marlboro Reds or Winston's or Camels. You can walk in, just kind of order a joints.
That's funny you mentioned that. I have to reach forward to grab a prop that I brought. This is a company out here. They're probably enjoying that little bit of blast. But yeah, this is a 10-pack of pre-roll half grams that you can go in and purchase at the shop.
Okay.
So,
see, I haven't really been out west in that environment to experience that sort of accessibility, and I'm sure many people listening haven't also. So that's really crazy to me. Okay, so let's jump into the content a little bit. Thanks for that update. Let's go with the big question to start it off is, what's the difference between THC and CBD, besides the fact that one gets you high and one doesn't?
Absolutely. So THC, or tetrahydrocannabinol, is the psychoactive effects of the cannabis plant. CBD, or cannabinol, is the I reserve to use the word medicinal. Maybe a better word to use would be therapeutic aspects of the cannabis plant. Again, I'm no doctor, so I can't say it's medicinal, and they're still in the process of determining, the full realities of that part of the plant. THC, the general idea for people is, I consume THC and that'll get me high, and that's just going to, make me loopy or get me jacked up to clean up the house, because again, there are many different strains of the plant. Similar to, a weed that grows on the East Coast that also grows on the West Coast. There's slight different variations in how, you know what I mean, landscaping wise there. So the big thing with CBD is it doesn't give you any psychoactive effects, and it isn't something that generally on first consumption you're going to take. However, your means of doing it, putting on as a patch, a balm, eating it, a drink I think you had or something like that, you're going to feel it on first usage. And it's kind of one of those products, much like I guess you could compare it to, in some cases, sometimes a fish oil. As far as internal consumption, I can honestly say with CBD patches or lotions, if you got a sore arm and you put this product on there, depending on the mentholatum application added to it, you will feel the effects of it, and it will make it feel better. Why? It's a great pain numbing. It affects the CBD receptors that are in the body, and this is where we get really crazy deep. It's called the endocannabinoid system. Every human being has one, and they are CBD receptors throughout your body and also in your brain, and THC receptors as well. This is where my knowledge gets to a point, and then it definitely gets into the science end of it. But it is something everyone needs to be aware that every single person has this system in their body, and it's what helps control hunger, depression, pain, anxiety, all of these different things.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I had no idea that we had natural receptors to each of those. Before we sat down, my back was getting a little tight because I had a podcast before this, and I did a relatively quick, not compared to our standards, Mark, 5K this morning. But I know I went out there and kind of struggled through it, and I came in and sat down, didn't stretch. I'm feeling tight, so I put this peppermint flavored or scented CBD oil on my erectors and my lower lats and above my glutes. And in the time that I've sat down here to talk to you, I'm feeling a warming sensation, but I don't know if that's CBD or something else in the oil, right? But I suppose that continued use will help relieve pain back there, but it won't fix it.
That's correct. I mean, the best way to look at it is, sometimes you really give yourself a ding and, let me get the ibuprofen, let me take some Tylenol. And, the people take it. And after time of usage, let me get a couple. Yeah, let me get a couple more, and then it gets to a bad habit usage. So it can be in the same. It's not a miracle fix it, but the beauty with the CBD is that you can apply it based on the directions on the bottle. You can apply it, at the usage. It's very few that you're going to come across that say, do not apply this more than 3 times in a day.
Right.
That's the nice thing about CBD. So you use it and maybe as you have that warming sensation that you're feeling. Well, maybe after this podcast, you'll say, you know what, man, maybe I'll put a little bit more on there and see what it feels like. And by tonight, you might just be in a situation like, wow, dude, this is crazy.
Well, at the same time, I also realized that my back is tight and my glutes are tight, because I was running with the right form, but the back got tight because my form started to go because I got a little bit tired near the end. And then lack of stretching, mobilization, probably dehydration is actually why the back hurts. So the CBD is more of a soothing, as you said before, therapeutic in between before I kind of actually rehab myself, which would be later today, with some stretching and whatnot. But that
right, I was just going to say, you and I both know, and back to water. That's the big reality for any human being, period. You've got to consume water. The beauty of the CBD is it can get in there much like using Bengay or one of these other Dragon Bomb or whatever you want to use to relax those muscles. Icy hot, there you go. It's the same therapeutic means, but you're not using a whole bunch of things that I'm not even going to pretend to try to pronounce, because when it goes one whole line and then on to the next one, it's one word, I'm not wanting to use that.
Right.
So I think that's a big thing. And I was going to say, a little story, very brief though. A good friend of mine in Colorado suffers from degenerative spine disorder. So his vertebrae are compressing and just basically just kind of grinding down after the disc. He's shrinking and all that stuff, and it's incredible agony. He's prescribed a multitude of pills for that. He wanted to try to get off of that stuff. And, so he does like to utilize the CBD and things like that. But, he wasn't sure, same aspect. So I happened to work for a company and I had a 500 milligram vial of CBD oil that I gave to him to take internally. And just to, it's kind of like aspirin or Tylenol in the sense of, when I say kind of like it, I mean, when your foot hurts or your shoulder hurt or your knee hurt, you took ibuprofen, and for whatever reason, it knew where to go based on how it triggered with the mind. Same exact thing with CBD oil. You take it and it knows where it needs to go. Interesting thing here. He was in so much pain that the pills he had to take, he could only take every 12 hours. He'd have to set an alarm for when he could take it again. Not so that he remembered to take it, but so that he would remember to wait until that time when he could, so he wouldn't get addicted in his system. So there were times he'd be waiting 2-3 hours in agony. So I gave him the vial. And I was like, let's talk in a few weeks, man. And a few weeks later, I talked to him. And I'm like, dude, how you doing, my friend? And he's like, dude, I don't know if it's your CBD oil or not. I'm not going to say it's the mystical fixer. But I used it for a week. And going into the second week, I noticed that I was hearing my alarm going off in the kitchen and remembering, oh, I got to get up and go take my pill. And I was like, I'm not going to say it's working, but I'm going to say it's doing something. So that's my.
I feel like people hear stories like that all can't always be substantiated, and you can't tell if it's the CBD helping or not. But I feel like it's a really widely varying positive supplement to what you take throughout life. And like the stuff that I have upstairs for my back, that's a topical sort of thing, right? So I don't really know if that's better than ingesting, whereas this Kill Cliff, which is a post-workout drink that has hemp in it, but it doesn't really say how I'm supposed to feel, so I can't tell if it's working or not, right? So, let's see, it says here, helps you rehydrate, 125 milligrams of hemp extract. It delivers 25 milligrams of CBD benefits that your body deserves. And there's a bunch of kitschy stuff written here. But that didn't tell me, at no point does it actually tell me what it's supposed to do for me. It's just a very nicely flavored orange kush. It's funny.
Ooh.
Yeah, orange, instead of orange crush, it's orange kush. And it's got the big CBD on there. And I drink it. I don't know if I feel anything. And I'm not looking for a THC effect. I'm looking for a woosah, man. Maybe like some relaxation. Maybe some of the stress or anxiety could melt away without being psychotropic or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's face it, at the end of the day, it's the same as a beer. And how does one beer affect one person as to the other? Every single person's body is different. And so that means each different consumable method or applicable method can vary for people. What might be for you, taking a drink like that, maybe it doesn't do very much. Maybe it's doing so little that you don't realize that, hey, you know what? I was able to actually keep going for an extra 30, 45 minutes. Didn't realize how it rejuvenated me a little bit. It's kind of one of those where, it kind of depends on what the delivery method is. If it's a sugary drink, I can't necessarily, attest to, is it going to do the right thing? The fact is that it does all attach to fat cells, so that that can be, beneficial for sure. But excessive sugars in anything is definitely going to, mess up specs. There's a thing called the entourage effect. And the entourage effect is when there's THC and CBD combined together. That is when everything is working cohesively. That is what predominantly a lot of the medicinal doctor prescribed methods try to tag. And again, this is for another podcast when we talk the medical, but the interesting thing about that is then, using that knowledge into the medical dispensaries that then gets dispersed into the recreational market as it opens up. But again, that's a whole nother aspect.
No, let's talk about it now, because I can scratch the surface on this with just one question, which I imagine has a relatively simple answer. So I deal with new business stress. My mind is always turning. I've always got ideas pumping out. And then I like to capitalize on opportunities. So I usually deal with a lot of positive stress, and it's kind of like just opportunities. But I'll lose sleep, but I can't fall asleep, or I get scattered in my thoughts. So in theory, if, let's say, West Virginia legalized medical marijuana, as it's put, I can then go to the doctor, and the doctor's like, bro, all you really need is some of the CBD THC combo, and that will chill you out. And then they give me a prescription that I would then take to a dispensary, and then they give it to me. Is that how that works?
That's correct. Basically, that's layman's coverage, if you will. And now the thing with the doctors is, and again, this is dependent on state by state, but when the programs are just initially getting going in the States, you're going to visit the doctor and you're, checking off the boxes, if you will, of, what are your issues, anxiety, depression, this. And maybe you're suffering from severe pain from, heartbreak from all those races that we ran together. Maybe you need something for that.
Oh, it sticks with me. It sticks with me.
Dude, who am I kidding? You would wipe me all over the place right now. I'm not even joking. So anyway.
Never know.
Right. So the big thing is that it's generally tried to be set up initially specifically to that person. I have a friend who was recovering from some bang up and all that, kind of from an accident, if you will, car accident, and he's on a medicinal program in one of the states, and he is prescribed both THC and CBD at pretty much open limits because of the realization that, wow, this is going to help, the body and the mind for you to recover and do what you need to. In other states, for example, as a little fact note that a lot of people might not be aware of, Governor Northam of Virginia there just decriminalized marijuana last week, which puts it at a fine for possession of, I think, $25 for up to an ounce. The next step for that is generally medicinal. And when medicinal hits,
Hold on.
Yeah.
Hold on. You just glazed over. I need the definition of that. You said that Governor Northam in Virginia legalized marijuana or decriminalized?
Decriminalized.
Okay, let's break that down then.
Vast difference. Okay. So decriminalization just means to the point of it is now such a minimal prosecutable offense that it is no longer the reason that maybe people like myself back in the 90s and 2000s, if I was dumb, was fearful to ride around with something. Now it's a $25 fine, which is the same or less than a parking ticket.
Wow. So think of the confusion there, man. Legalization, decriminalization. In my mind, they're the same thing, bro. I'm not thinking like that's how it sounds.
Right. It's funny when people on the federal level, it's not legal on the federal level. Therefore, we're still on the federal level scheduled as a Category 1 drug, which is right in there with heroin and cocaine, which is mind-boggling absurd.
Right.
And if they simply decriminalized, not legalized, but decriminalized marijuana on a federal level, well, then every state at that point would have access to things like banking and all of those plays. And it then becomes something that, okay, well, since it's not even viewed as prosecuted on a high level by the federal level, well, then the states will always follow suit and or make their moves on their own like they're doing now. So it'd be a means for the dominoes to really just start falling in a rapid way. Legalization is to the point where it's legal in these other states. As for mentioned, for me, I can drive from the border of Canada to the border of Mexico, and I can stop and purchase legal marijuana all the way in any dispensary I want. There are limits that you're allowed to possess during the day and purchase, and limits of what you can have on you. And frankly, if you have it on you and you're driving, one, you don't want to be using it. And two, you want to generally have it put away, locked up in your trunk where it's not near you. Same exact thing to drinking and driving. Same rules apply. So that's something a lot of people need to remember, and you don't abuse it from that sense. So.
Wow. I love the Break It Down for Brackens podcast. I swear to God, I learned so much that is awesome. And I know people listening, some people know I'm pretty sharp and some people might think I'm kind of dense, but I have to put myself in a dense position to understand the foundational points, and that's totally. I never even thought about the difference between legalization versus decriminalization and what that really could mean. So the West Coast states have decriminalized it and legalized it. and you can buy it like a pack of cigarettes. You could carry it right here in your pocket like people did smoking cigarettes, right? And
you might get a couple more questions asked if you happen to get, pulled over while driving and they see a pack of,
a pack of smokes.
whatever. But in the same respects, though, it's, it's just like the training that all the police officers go through for X, Y, or Z. The training that they've all gone through out here for recognition of somebody who is, highly intoxicated, I guess, if you will.
Yeah.
They recognize that on a bigger plane, and it's no longer, something that is just being searched through and for. It's such a minimal offense. So
I guess you're right. So I wouldn't be driving with a 6-pack of beers and have 2 of them open, 1 empty in the front seat of my car either. So,
right. Exactly.
Yeah, and I'm assuming if you're a regular user, like you smoke 4 joints a day, I guess. Who even knows if we're smoking joints anymore? It's gotten so technological. But if you're smoking 4 joints a day and you've got your pack of joints in your pocket, you're not actively smoking while you're driving, you shouldn't get your balls busted. So it's so hard to grasp from how I felt when I was in high school if I was doing something illegal to how it could be now on the West Coast and eventually across the whole state. But let's think for a second. If the West Coast says it's illegal to buy, just like beer, it's legal to buy in California and all the states over there.
Yeah.
Federally, the country can't mandate what California does?
Well, no, this is, as they like to put it, the Constitution gives the states their own rights to make moves on certain avenues here. And,
okay.
And more to the point of they let the people vote in each state. On the majority, across the board, the majority of states that have gone medicinal and legal have been because the people themselves in the state, it went on the ballot. And it's usually been put onto the ballot by NORML or MPP, and that's Marijuana Policy Project, or NORML, National Organization for the Rights of Marijuana Legalization. Those are the 2 main groups, and they push to get a lot of these things onto the ballots. Then the people themselves vote for it. So it is a bummer when you see certain states are like, oh, it didn't make it again, and you're like, what is wrong with you folks
so,
there?
It didn't make it to the ballot, or it got voted down?
Got voted down by the people. Now, what's interesting, some states, they're not quite there. They're getting there, and more people are voting. Wait, I see the positives to it. And there's 2 reasons. People look at it from, I don't want all those stoners roaming around my town, or the educated people. Like, let's face it, I am a user, but I also am an executive sales director for the company Rokin, and I'm in charge of hundreds of accounts across the nation. So because
they're
of
probably
that,
already walking around your town.
What's that now?
They're probably already walking around your town,
Oh, yeah.
They're just getting it on an illegal basis.
Absolutely. Lawyers, in some cases, maybe some levels of doctors, teachers for sure at all levels. There are a lot of people who might once in a blue moon choose to utilize that, whether for whatever.
I wanted to have this podcast so I could understand more about THC and CBD, because I also do this podcast with people running for office. And I know the topic is going to come up sooner than later about people's platforms being one of the definitions of legalization or decriminalization. And I'm thinking, I bet I've been hearing decriminalization a lot more than legalization. I have them both in the same, they were both in the same sort of understanding level, right?
Right.
I wanted to understand it so that I could really process some good questions to people running for office, like governor or Congress or whatever, higher level decision makers. So that's awesome, man.
Well, here's
awesome.
Interesting too for you, because a lot of people maybe aren't aware on the East Coast because it isn't promoted and talked about very much. Massachusetts is recreationally legal. Maine is recreationally legal. You could drive to those states for a holiday and spend your week. Yeah. So you could go to Boston for a tea party or a marathon. or a marathon. And at the end of it, after you've won whatever it was that you were going for, you can celebrate with a space cake or a pre-roll.
Holy shit, dude. Okay.
Yeah.
Again, I don't think I'm super dense. I'm just, because it's not on my radar, I'm not paying attention.
Well, it's not talked about out there. Let's face it. We know each other from Virginia. I'm a Nova boy. My dad and brother work in government sectors, as you know. And so I see both sides of the fence. And then especially having bartended there for 17 years and so many years in restaurants, you and I both know the ideology that exists there, and it's great, and it's what focuses and runs so many things. But it's not a conversation piece with people at the dinner table generally.
Yeah, it still has a stigma to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, we got to get back on track, because I definitely took us on a sideways note there, and thank you for what you understand and explaining it to me. Let's get back to CBD for a second. In our pre-discussion, for the sake of content, we discussed how to determine, well, just the beginnings of how to determine a quality CBD product. Like I said, I'm not saying the kill clip doesn't work. Maybe I need to drink 3 of them. Maybe that delivery method's not for me. The stuff I put on, maybe that's not for me. I was texting with somebody in New York who uses a CBD that they put it under their tongue or something. I just, how do we determine what a good company is when purchasing something? Because again, the sidebar for a second, the CBD dropper was like 70 bones. That's a little jar with a little squeeze thing on top, the dropper, $70. I don't want to spend $70 on some voodoo. I want to spend it on something that I know is going to actually work.
Right. And it's a huge point. And the fact is, the market has been opened up to anyone being allowed to jump into it. And it wasn't the case originally. Obviously, hemp was also in a controlled aspect to where each state might have wanted to do it, but they weren't allowed to do it. As an example, West Virginia, I think we're mentioning there's a hemp farm down the road from you, and they've now sprung up in Virginia and West Virginia. That's because of the farm bill that passed. And when the farm bill passed, it allowed for hemp CBD to be grown throughout the U.S. And then at that point, it boils down to each state allowing it and then each county allowing it. So in simplistic terms, everybody who does drink knows or loves Jack Daniels. Jack Daniels is from a dry county in Lynchburg. They're not allowed to consume anything there, but they can create the product there. You can argue some cases that's what will happen eventually with some of the THC plants, but that's why some counties allow CBD to be grown and some don't. And that boils down a lot of the times to the misunderstanding of psychoactive effects of the product, as opposed to, hey, you're growing a medicinal plant here. The big thing with CBD is the company that's producing it. There are hundreds of them out there. I do trade shows all the time, and we just went to one a few months ago, and it was a CBD trade show. And you would think, okay, cool, there should be like 3-4 rows. Man, there were, like I said, there were hundreds of companies, to a point that we ourselves are even walking around, and it gets to a point where the trust in the merchant that is purchasing that product and selling it to you, that they've done their research to know that the test results have been provided with that. And when people hear test results, what the hell's test results? Test results is so that people know there aren't pesticides in the plants from growing, from them, maybe using Roundup to kill weeds or anything like that. We don't want anything in that's going to be a consumable product. Hold the horse.
Touch on that for a minute. What are some things that could go wrong at the plant level? Like you said, pesticides. And I heard another podcast that talked about really bad pesticides with illegally purchased marijuana sources.
Okay.
Why is that important?
Well, remember the whole crazy vaporizer cartridge issue that we just had this past fall, where suddenly people were dying from vaporizers, so they've pulled all these things from markets and things like that? Well, when you pinpoint the source of what was the creator of all this, at the end of the day, unfortunately, it was black market material from grow operations, from THC operations, and combined in some cases with horribly cheap product, cartridges that are carrying it.
Okay, so hold on. You twisted it on me. Let's say what you just said again, but you have to describe what product versus equipment.
Okay, yeah. So let me see, what the heck did I say there? Okay, so the big thing as an example of a product that had pesticides in it with the vapor cartridge issue.
Okay, so the product is the concentrate.
The concentrate and it originated as a THC marijuana plant.
Okay.
So the THC marijuana plant, and this is actually an article out there. I can't give a link to it right now off the top of my head, or the name. But there was a company in California, a reputable company that actually dealt on the legal market side for their dispensaries. They grew a lot of product, and any batches, when they run them through the test results to check for any high levels of pesticides, and pesticides can be anything, including leftover nutrients used as fertilizer and things like that people use even in their own yards. You always want to make sure that you're using healthy organic things, and then that you're washing them through with water and everything. So these plants hadn't been cleansed entirely, and they failed the inspection, the test. Well, by law, those products are supposed to be immediately destroyed. Well, some of these companies, the owners, were exceptionally greedy. And so they put a backdoor operation up. And ironically enough, this operation was down on the same street that the police academy was on. And so this guy had a backdoor operation going where they were taking this tested positive for pesticide marijuanas and were blasting it down, creating their concentrates, and then loading that into these cartridges and sending them all over the place, to where people even out east and all over the country, getting these nice fancy cartridges that, hey, these are from California. You can only purchase things recreationally over the counter. So how are we getting that many? No one's going to, out of their way, spend $30 over the counter for a cartridge, come back and sell it for $31. You are a horrible entrepreneur.
Right.
So we know it's illegal black market stuff, and that's what created that whole crisis. And then I said, combined with crappy materials that were coming out of China, multiple tier levels of manufacturer companies that do what we do, but we are a top tier level because we take our time to make sure all the products clear all the certifications that are required, both US side and European wise. So, but that explains that aspect of what I meant by product, if you will.
Yeah, I was confused between product and equipment, because you sell a product, but your product is equipment. Anyways, yeah, that's for a second. So good companies do testing, and you were saying they test for, and yes, we were asking was what goes wrong at the plant level. So if you have to envision a farm, and I'm going to envision something the size of my backyard, okay, it's something small, because I saw the one in Virginia down in, I want to say it's Radford. It's down by Radford. There's a humongous farm. You can see it all from the highway, and it's almost 3/4 of a mile long, along 81. It's just huge, and it's just hills and hills of, I think it's called True Harvest. I think it's what it's called. Anyways, it's amazing it's right there. But I'm going to envision something in my backyard, which is mostly everybody's typical backyard. And I bet I have numerous plants out there. To keep bugs off of them, a normal operation would put some sort of bug deterrent on it, right? That's
sure
what I'm figuring. I know we do this with our tomatoes and cucumbers, and a lot of the food we get put on salads, those probably have some sort of pesticide sprayed on them at some point. Maybe, maybe not.
They could be already pre-treated with something to keep them from, getting attacked. I mean,
Yeah, infected and stuff like that. So
yeah.
I'm still eating that salad. I'm still eating those cucumbers. I'm still eating those tomatoes. How is it that much worse if it's in marijuana?
Well, it's what's used, and it's using organic pesticides, if you will, things that are known that are not harmful to the human consumption, but that can be used as a cleanser, if you will, for these things. It's the same thing applies to when you're buying organic vegetables as opposed to the other section of vegetables. Well, the organic, has to pass these strict standards, and those standards mean everything you're using has to be of an organic base, to a point of I can't speak to a knowledge, but where somebody might put a juice with a light sugar and a water mixed together and lightly spray that on a plant to use it to keep something off of it. Again, at this point, I'm talking a little bit out of my my knowledge on the botany end, but
Gotcha.
You get the gist.
Yeah, I get that. I get that. Sometimes my questions will pull us down a path of some other expert, probably a farm person, and I can think of who to call.
Well, here's an interesting thing too, though, for you on that, because a lot of people don't understand with the hemp plant, the uniqueness of it, and the reason you have to be so specific with the hemp and the THC plant, but especially the hemp plant, is the way they absorb nutrients. They very much cleanse the ground that they're planted in. They'll absorb everything. A very little known fact, there's a huge field of hemp planted near the Chernobyl area to pull the radiation out of the soil. And it's pulled into those plants. Those plants are then chopped down and destroyed. And then, another, and it's helping use to cleanse the soil. So the same thing, if in your backyard, you want to grow something like that, and, oh man, I'm sick of these darn weeds over here. Well, I'm just going to, spray something bad like a Roundup over here. Yeah, that is the last thing you want going into that product that eventually later on you're going to be consuming.
So that makes a lot more sense. So because the hemp plant is a ground cleansing type of plant, that's awesome, man. That's really good to know. Okay. Yeah. So then proper testing on a CBD product, how is that done, or who's in charge of that sort of regulation? For example, I was painting a place in Harper's Ferry, and this older fella came up and started talking to us. I mean, even during the freaking quarantine, I had to run him off, but I was like, you're not getting us sick, dude. Just, you gotta go. He was very excited to promote his new oils and CBD oils that he's selling. And I was like, that sounds suspect. Like, I don't really know why I just don't see how he's making it in his kitchen. It almost made me think of meth. Like, oh, you're making your own version of this now? So, right. So how does one get tested? Or how does one get, how do you test your CBD?
Well, there's labs that one can go to, but not anyone as a just an individual can grow something or create something and then call up the lab and say, hey, I want to get this tested to be sold. You have to be an operating business entity if you want to get it, tested for sure.
This dude was definitely not.
I mean, was this like his own little jar with a sticker sideways on it, still drying?
Yeah, it's just a dude. Some dude was rolled up to us, and he was not an entity or a business. He was a guy who I guess probably had some illegally procured plants. Now, let me drop back on the same topic though. When we were talking a couple of days ago, you said that, was it on the THC side that every seed is tracked, or is that also on the hemp side?
It would be on the hemp side. Okay, well, that's actually an interesting question. On the THC side, the second a seed goes into the ground, it has what's called a metric tracking number, and that's to track every plant that comes off of that. So you grow one plant off a seed, and then people do what are called cloning, where they'll cut limbs off of that plant and make new ones. Each one of those will get a new metric tag number. So they're all traced from start to finish so that you can trace everything that's gone into that product from the first day it was created. And that's what that platform is for. The CBD and hemp market is done a little differently because it isn't tagged for each plant. You've just got fields of the product being grown. It then needs to be sent to the correct facility to have it tested. And there are testing facilities popping up in virtually every state now, as far as I'm aware, that are there to test the CBD hemp content. The main reason that they're testing, not only for what I had mentioned for pesticides and leftover nutrients not washed or anything like that, but it is being tested for THC content. The reason I'm saying that is, remember when we started at the beginning of the podcast and we were asking, so what's the difference? Well, they all come from a cannabis plant. And so they're different cousins, if you will, but because it's a cousin, it still can have THC in it, unless it's been bred to have it removed. For example, like the strain Charlotte's Web.
Hold on, maybe
That's
maybe the audio got weird. You said CBD can or cannot? You said can't or can have THC in it.
Okay, it can, and that's where the testing comes in.
Okay.
There was a big issue with some of the growers in the Virginia and Charlestown area in West Virginia, from what I understand last year, where they grew their product and everyone had to destroy a lot of it because it was declared hot. And hot means that it tested above the legal limit of THC content. So for any product that's sold on the market for a general consumer, like yourself or anyone who fits under, I can have a 0.003% THC. That's when it's in a full spectrum. Now, if it's a broad spectrum, then it's going to be no THC. It's completely removed from the product, and it's just different forms of extraction there.
0%.
So yeah, so that means that they qualify for under 0.003% THC in the product. So then they do not need to list or label it at all. However, if you get a full spectrum oil, you're going to see that it has 0.003% THC. The difference being is that somebody in a government job who does want to utilize CBD because they've heard it works really great for somebody like yourself, but I cannot test for THC, period. Okay, well, use the product that is absolutely fully stripped. And then that's going to be the broad spectrum. And then, so it's,
okay.
So it basically, and this is a little read up. I told you I had some of my notes open because I wanted to be able to refer them to cover that. So this is basically a broad spectrum CBD is a middle ground option between isolate and full spectrum CBD. It begins as full spectrum oil, and then has a full range of beneficial cannabinoids and terpenes. And then it goes through a refinement process to remove the THC compounds. So that's what broad spectrum is that it goes through a chemical removal process of the THC to thereby just have the oil itself.
Thanks.
There's a lot.
No. That was really good.
Goes everywhere.
Okay, we're almost wrapping this up. I only have 2 more sections of notes. The next one is, you're in it. So what is the future of CBD? What are we going to see in the next 18 months for CBD products that hopefully I notice work more?
Okay, well, yeah, absolutely. This is an interesting market because CBD is its own entity, and then the THC marijuana is its other side. However, there are certain parts that are overlapping, and that would be businesses and branding and recognition of product. And it comes back around to a topic earlier of, how do I know that this company's product that I'm buying is good? How do I know it's better than that? And it boils down to the reputable businesses and relationships that have been built up, and then growing from there. So, for example, Rokin, the company I work for, we are in the process now. We'll be creating and releasing some of our own CBD products over the next few months. And those will be some gummies and some topicals and a roll-on initially, and some cartridges actually. And those cartridges would be utilized also in our little device that we carry there. But the big thing is, in the national spectrum of what it's going to do, every state is going to get growing hemp within the next, within this next year or so. There will be certain regions that are going to do much, much better. The big thing with hemp, and we had talked about this not only a few days ago, but on that amazing drive to Ohio when we had not much else to talk about, and it was, let's pick this brain. I discussed the whole reality of where hemp goes. Hemp is a very unique thing because obviously you can grow hemp for the CBD and the flower end of it, or you can grow hemp for textiles. And that's why I say every state will end up growing hemp. Not all of them are going to be growing it for the flower medicinal product. Some are going to be growing it to be utilized in things like hempcrete, which is concrete. A hempcrete wall, I think, is about 3 feet thick of solid hempcrete, can withstand up to almost 1,200 degrees of flame on one side and still be a room temperature on the other. That's not happening with too many building products. So there's so many different things. For example, the hay that's spread down for horses to stand on in their paddocks. You can use hemp instead, and you can shave up the shock of the hemp, and you can put that down there. And one, it's softer for them, and two, it's antibacterial. So it actually helps heal their hooves and their feet while they're trotting on it. So there are so many uses that it is sad and ironic that we went for so long as a country not allowing this, when, I mean, the most simplistic thing hemp was used for was creating rope. And some of the best rope is made from hemp.
And sails, right? Sails back in the day. Weren't sails?
Yep, sails, clothing.
Like because of durability.
Correct. Durability and softness. It's like a cotton that just that stays soft as all can be. In fact, I've got a pair of hemp pants that I was wearing last night, and I mean, it's you feel like the surfer guy at the beach all the time when you're wearing them. So where do I see the market going? It's going to get big in certain regions. Virginia is going to become a prime hemp market because of it grows very similar to tobacco. So you look at states like Virginia, North Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, where, for example, Kentucky and Tennessee for a long time have had hemp programs going. Virginia, James Madison University has a hemp growing program that's been going for a few years out at their university, where they actually grow plants for the research. The interesting thing, Kevin, is there are many different benefits to the plant itself. This is getting off on another topic that we can get into at another point, but all of these original cannabinoids, THC, CBD, and all of them, they start as called CBG. And then as that changes in the compound structure, it goes into all these other different avenues. And then eventually degenerated THC can turn into CBN, and that is a sleep aid. But again, this goes down other wormholes. So
holy shit, dude. There's so many things.
Right, and the reason I bring that up is because it applies to your question of, well, where do I see it going in the next year, 18 months? There are companies that are now growing plants that have been genetically structured, unfortunately it's modified or whatever you want to say, to grow specifically a CBG or a CBN or something like that. And those are very scientifically getting specific now. And these are going to be the new aids that when it goes federally legal for the THC and CBD, and okay, let me backtrack, because CBD is allowed on the farm bills, federal decriminalization, if you will, but it is still waiting for full FDA approval. So people are making it in products, but there are going to be eventually testing results that will come along with that, to where it says, hey, this is, because, like some of the, look at some of the muscle proteins, and you read on the back the disclaimer, this is not FDA approved or
Right.
Right. So one argues that that's a lot of the same realities right now. Once the pharmaceutical companies get into it full swing, which they are beginning to make their moves that direction, that's when you'll see them creating pills and or whatever the implementation might be, where it is a CBD or a CBN. I've got a company that I represent that makes CBN capsules mixed with a fish oil, and they're called Omax, and they used to do fish oil components back in the day. They had ads all over ESPN 10 years ago about, hey, fish oil help relax you and relax you at night. They've now transitioned into putting CBD in their products, and so as an added aid to the relaxation. And so it's going to be it's going to be a multi-billion-dollar market. And when I say multi-billion, we're talking it could start in the minimals of, the ones and threes. And within 10 years, it's going to be in the 15, 20 billions. An interesting point when we were talking legalization, when you look at what are the benefits for states doing it, well, one, why are you wasting all those taxpayers' dollars on the police force and, jails and all that to put all these people in there? Just legalize it, and then you can get your tax revenue off of it. And when you look at tax revenue, Colorado just legalized in 2014 recreationally. It is now 2020. It's 6 years later. They've already topped, I believe, $1 billion in tax revenue off of sales. Now, you tell me you can't fix a road or two with that.
I'll tell you what, man. I'm seeing all kinds of angles if I was higher up, right, in politics or whatever. I'm seeing entire counties and towns going broke after a 1-month quarantine. Their tax revenues are destroyed. I'm seeing in states who have to delay filing state income tax and delaying payment, which was going to put them hundreds of millions of dollars behind. My company, Brackens Painting, we're taking a tempo hit. We're not making as much as we normally would in a busy season like we're in now, but that means I'm paying less in taxes, which means somebody's not getting my tax money, which means one more road's not going to get paved, or one more National Guard helicopter won't get built, or whatever the case is, right?
Yeah. Well, go ahead.
Well, hold on. So decriminalization or releasing the reins on the uses of hemp and all these things could literally bring everybody back when it comes to tax revenues. They could literally within a year be caught back up. I mean, that's how I see it. The second thing I saw, was I was thinking of, and we may have alluded to this on one of our previous conversations, was with the significant distrust in China right now. I mean, not only are they just being scandalous normally, but now there's a whole disease that came out of China, and now it's crippling the global economy. There's going to be a distrust. It'll still be convenient to get things from China, but if America or the rest of the country or world was able to pivot even 20% of their textiles purchases into made in America and made with hemp, dude, that would be gangbusters, right?
It would. I think, Kevin, you touched on a very, very interesting, massively broad point that can be comprised very simply. when you look at what happened with steel industry and the explosion of what that created in wealth for a small handful, but how it constructed America and what we did with that, and how we had a brilliant let me retract the brilliant. We had a railway system that went across the U.S. I hesitate to say brilliant because, as we talked before, I traveled all through Europe. You can get to the smallest village in any country practically in Europe by rail, then down to stages of buses. We don't have that in our country. So areas started to get blocked off and chopped off because we are a nation built on capitalism, which means, hey, you know what? There's how many different car brands? I don't remember what you drove. I remember we made fun of each other's vehicles back in the day. My Hyundai Excel would actually make it up a hill. I think you and I could push that car up a hill. It was that light of a vehicle. But the point being is that's what we've been pushed since the 70s and the 80s and the 90s was individuality. This virus has brought everybody back inside to where it could very well change certain aspects of that. Does everyone need to own a car? No, we don't really. We don't. We're just trained that that's where we need to be. The reason I'm bringing this up is we get a restructured transportation throughout the country of the rail system that now gets towns and all those connected back up. You and I commented on this on the drive to Ohio, and I can attest to it on my motorcycle rides because one of my cool things I did on those rides is I chose to not take major highways. I always use back highways. So I saw America, and I saw towns that, exactly as you mentioned, totally desolate, nothing going on because they lost industry there. Well, how do you revitalize that? There's so many layers to this, Kevin. You bring up, we won't even talk about climate, but climate is a huge aspect. When you look at how it affects the growing nature and nature itself, and how it can demolish growing areas, and combine that with the virus right now, where they're saying we're going to have issues with the food chain potentially, and there could be shortages. So what's that forcing Americans to do? It's forcing them, for the ones that have the opportunity, to go and do their own garden. I've got 3 separate beds growing outside that I'm trying to do. The extension of all of these things that one could do. Whoops, sorry there. My phone told me I was battery. One of the biggest things here, and I'll make it shorter and briefer, if you were to take the idea of not only legalization of marijuana, but expand it to the CBD market, and then even expand it to how do you revitalize America at a time like this, we need to teach people to grow for themselves in certain areas. Some of these towns you and I could go to. I think we talked about business ideas a few days ago. And, imagine a country like Amsterdam, or excuse me, the country like Netherlands or Holland, if you will, and they are a microscopic size in comparison to the United States, yet they grow 2 to 3 times, they grow the second or third most amount of vegetation in the world in indoor structures built up and down. I bring that up because you think of all these towns we went through. You could set all of these towns in empty buildings up to where you've got a grow facility in the back where you're growing fresh vegetables, and in the front you have a little storefront to sell them. And then as you're able to expand, you can take it up a floor and grow another set of vegetables. And then if legalization of marijuana becomes a point, well, cool, you can do that on another floor. The opportunities to rebuild America utilizing our own infrastructure. And then when I mentioned the steel people and everyone making their monies, coming full circle back to that, this is the most important time in America for all those that are listening, that are watching the podcast, that, are fortunate and come from an affluent avenue. Those are the ones that can help fix this for everyone, because they're the ones who have the finances to be able to invest in rebuilding America for Americans. And that's what needs to be done. You and I, our companies are tight right now. I'm sure we're pinched pretty darn tight. We can do as much as we can. We can be warriors on the front line, but are we the ones that can throw in the necessary funds needed to generate X, Y, or Z? Maybe not. I can't. I know that.
Right.
And that's what we need these people to contribute so that they do rebuild America, so that their advantages for their monies aren't to send it off to jobs and companies overseas, but more so you get the benefits because you revitalized, pick a city, Texas, and you took this town where no one's got a damn job. You just now took everyone off unemployment, which created tax freedom for the state. You gave a job to everyone there, which now is bringing money in there. You've now got other industries that will support the people there for the jobs. You can open up a restaurant. Now, there's so many things that happen with the evolution of this industry that one argues happens with every other industry, but this is the one that you can just see the revenue being produced in the legal markets. That, man, if we just get good governors who know how to utilize those funds, forget about it. We can do it ourselves.
Dude, this is great, man. And I totally agree with all that. I agree with a small economy, dealing with what I've got right in front of me, dealing with the pieces that I can move. I mean, I can't move on a state level, but I can move on a town and county level. But yeah, dude, I see it. I'm glad we had this conversation, because it's helping me see, it's helping me realize my ideas weren't totally crazy. So thank you for that. But wrapping up, man, tell me what Rokin's doing, what they got coming up, how we can learn more about the company you're with.
Hey, absolutely. Well, appreciate it. I mean, again, appreciate you having me on and letting me blaze the Rokin across the chest here. And, so we're a manufacturing company that started as a hardware company. We're in the process of creating CBD products. As far as where's our hardware available, you can find it throughout the U.S. We got our products in dispensaries for people to purchase to go with their concentrates that they buy there or their cartridges. This is one of our biggest sellers right here. This is a cartridge device right there. So your cartridge just screws right into that, and that you can buy the cartridges at the dispensaries, and then a lot of them sell the mini tank right there with it. It's just a very good, smooth, and discreet method of usage. Comes with the lanyard to be able to hang on there. But these are the types of devices that we create. We are in all the legal states. There's at least a handful of dispensaries in each state that has our product. But you can go even to your local head shop or glass shop or tobacco store right up the road. A lot of them are carrying these devices, and then they'll be carrying our CBD products as we expand. We had mentioned I'm the East Coast sales manager for the company. I cover everything east of the Mississippi River, so I have a very large territory. And I actually cover Colorado and presently living out in Oregon and cover up in this territory as well. So it's a lot. But yeah.
Okay, so if I vaporize CBD and inhale it, how without FDA approval, it's hard to say what it actually does, right?
Well, you can definitely say that if you're inhaling it, it is going to calm you. It's a very relaxer. I'm not going to sit here and say, hey, use it for X, Y, or Z. But having said that, what I tell somebody who's in college, studying for exam, that has anxiety before the night of a test or something, to maybe take a little CBD to try to relax their mind and their body. Absolutely. Before something like one of these interviews, how's your back feeling?
It's getting better.
There you go.
Yeah.
So the thing is that that's what we do. We go around the whole country. I go in person to all these places, and I call the phone to a lot of places, and we do a bunch of events. Now, obviously this year, there's probably not going to be any trade shows for the rest of this year. But that gives us plenty of time for us to work on our telemarketing skills and, frankly, do more things like this, because I appreciate this greatly, Kevin. And, the biggest thing I always tell people is, get out, explore, keep toking your Rokin. And, I had to get it in.
Before we wrap up, I can think of products that work. Valerian root works for me. That'll put me to sleep. Melatonin will really knock me on my butt, but it's not something I take when I'm awake. I take it to supplement my sleep. And then Jenny's looked up some studies that say why you shouldn't take melatonin, because it really actually messes with your sleep rhythm. So I believe she's right, but I also like to get the result of a better night's sleep. as far as I'm perceiving it. So I think that, I know I am, and I assume most people are out there looking for items that work. So if something has a calming effect, fuck yeah, man. That's what I want to hear about. That's what I need. I need to be calmer. I need to be more relaxed. So I look forward to trying it. I've never done any sort of inhalable CBD. So like I said, I have that dumb drink. Questionable. Not totally sold on what that's doing for me. The little lotion, is it the peppermint? Is it some sort of icy hot sort of application that's working, or is it actually CBD? I don't know. Am I not using it enough? I don't know. I feel like it's also experimental,
It is.
Yeah.
It is. It's a lot of building up in the body. Hey, when we get our cartridges out there, know that, we do all major testings that are required plus some extra. So, when we get some CBD cartridges and that going, I'll make sure to get some heading your way so you can check it out. And, the biggest thing is doing the research on the company yourself with the CBD and realizing that it is something that just has to naturally build up in our bodies, because frankly, it all boils down to nutrition, right? It's all what we consume, and we for a long time were taught not to consume some of these things. But cannabinoids can be found in many, many different plants. Same with terpenes.
I know we're trying to wrap up, right? So what would be okay, so I've been to races. Like I went to a race like this time a year ago up in Vermont. And they had CBD lotion that you put on that alleviates your sore muscles. And I looked at them like, so does Ben Gay, bro. So I don't know what you're pitching to me, right? And then another example is this joker in Harper's Ferry trying to pitch me on this idea of buying some CBD oil from him. What would be one or two questions I want to ask these guys to find out? Like, without them being able to give me like, hey, is it tested? Oh yeah, it's tested. No, like what would be a good question to ask a company?
I mean, where did the product get created? Where's it from? What you can always ask.
When you say product, you mean the plant?
Where's the CBD? Where's the CBD? The thing that he's offering to you, whether it be a cartridge with something in it or an edible, or where did you make this? Because if the labeling looks like it's made at home, it was made at home, and I would not generally recommend consuming anybody's made at home unless you know them very well. And
okay. Sure. I mean, who knew? Because a lot of times it sounds like it's a mom and pop operation. Almost everywhere I go, I feel like besides Kill Cliff, which is a big time workout drink, they got theirs somewhere too. But most of the time I feel like it's a mom and pop startup,
Yeah, and sorry, apologies. I just had to relocate to plug my charger in, so you get a different change of view for the rest of this here.
That's all good. I mean, it's been,
man.
Yeah.
I think the reality is that that's one of the biggest things that even if you don't know the answer to this, if you want to throw somebody off their game and see what they really are talking about. So what was the extraction method? I know I just said something that went over your head, and that's to get into for another point. But when they know what they're talking about, you've got a lot better reality. But if their response is, well, I'm not really too sure, walk away.
Okay.
Walk away.
That's great, man. No, that's a really great way. Like, what's your extraction method, or where was it made, or where did the CBD come from? Those are at least starter conversations. You can gauge what somebody's experience in is it. Because I feel like everywhere I go, someone's selling some sort of CBD, like farmers market CBD. What?
Well, it's funny, yeah. There's a lot of farmers markets. People are selling the CBD, and we can go on and on for that forever. But you definitely always want to be skeptical about the person who comes up to you randomly and says, "Hey, you want to buy a watch?"
Right? Yeah. Yo, I got some speakers in my van out here in the parking lot. Come check it out.
Let's do it quick, though. Let's do it quick.
So real quick, Rokin, what's the website?
Rokin, www.rokinvapes.com.
ROKIN Vapes.
You got it. We got a nice 20% off special going right now because of the coronavirus thing. So we know everyone's at home, and we want everyone to be safe. like I said, my normal tagline was get out, explore, keep toking a Rokin. And right now it's get out to your backyard and explore safely and keep toking that Rokin.
All right, cool. And then we'll look forward to when you guys come out with the CBD. Any potential timelines on that?
I want to say within the next 2 to 3 months, but obviously with the issues at hand right now, manufacturing for all the different products have slowed down a little bit due to people, having to be, not being able to be at these places to work. But, we're hoping the next 2 to 3 months, and if it gets expedited, we'll get on that. And hopefully we get on and do this again, soon, man. I'd love to do this every month with you.
Oh, yeah, man. Mark, I think I'm going to probably use you as my go-to expert. A, because I know you and I trust you, and B, because I know you've been in it a long time. And there might even be potential to have you plus somebody else on to talk about 2 different points of view on the same topic. That would be fun too, I think.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I think I'm going to make you my THC CBD professor. Maybe we'll have one of these every 2 to 3 months,
Dude, I love that. I'm going to have my dad hear this now so he can see my education paid off.
Parents are the best. All right, Mark, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap it up. I really appreciate you being on the podcast. Thank you.
Kevin, thank you so much, brother. Appreciate having me. Great seeing you. I'll get a beard for next time.
Right on, bud.
All right, brother.
This podcast is brought to you by City National Bank in Ransom, West Virginia. I am Melissa Knott and manage both of our Jefferson County locations. Our Charlestown location is located on George Street in Charlestown, and the Ransom location is located in the Potomac Marketplace Shopping Center. City National Bank is a full-service community bank that provides an array of financial services. We offer a range of free checking accounts and savings products for both consumer and business customers. City National Bank offers competitive low-rate and low-cost lending products for both business and personal needs. Come and talk to me or one of my team members and get products and services that are tailored to fit your schedule and help you to achieve your financial goals. I can be reached at both the Ransom and Charlestown locations. Check out our website at www.bankatscity.com.
Today's intro song is called Mean in a Good Way. It's written and performed by Peter Clark off of his album Peter Clark After Dark. Peter describes this song as being the best song to learn hula hooping to. Peter is an avid hooper and recently started a hula hoop repair business. If you ever need hula hoop repair, consider contacting Peter. You can reach him on SoundCloud. Just search Peter Clark After Dark.